Yud Zayin Mishnah Aleph. We're now moving to the topic of muktzah, which is a very interesting and intricate topic. And of course, one could spend weeks and months, even more, preparing and learning the halachas of muktzah. They're very involved, very interesting. But a brief introduction, I think, will suffice. Nehemiah was the one who introduced the halachas of muktzah. Muktzah, of course, therefore, is all midrabanan, and it's such a feature so strongly for us on a day-to-day understanding of what Shabbos is all about. But muktzah is midrabanan, and Nehemiah saw some sort of laxity, some sort of weakening in Shmir Shabbos, and therefore he wanted to bolster the keeping of Shabbos, and therefore he introduced the concept of muktzah. And Chazal the Rishonim give different reasons why he wanted to introduce the topic of muktzah. The Rambam gives three reasons. The first reason is that the Torah tells us Lema'an yonuach, that on Shabbos a person should rest, and therefore within the permits of keeping Shabbos min Torah, a person could spend the whole of Shabbos rearranging articles or moving stones or the like, and wouldn't be over any issa of Shabbos. So therefore, says the Rambam, Nehemiah introduced muktzah to make sure that a person would be mekayim the leman yonuach properly on Shabbos. A second reason the Rambam gives is that if it would be mutter to handle all kelim normally, then a person may come to do malachas. So, for example, if a person was able to sort of touch a pen or hold or move a pen normally, then he may come to use the pen to do a malacha of kosev, of writing. A third reason the Rambam gives is that a person who is unemployed, who doesn't have any trade, any job, it's very difficult to differentiate his conduct on Shabbos and during the week. During the week he is bottled, he is not involved in activity, and on Shabbos similar. So therefore Chazal, to differentiate between the person who has work and doesn't have work, between the person who doesn't have work, how he behaves on Shabbos and not on Shabbos, we instituted the concept of muktzah. Therefore, his activity on Shabbos will be markedly different to even that of during the week. Other reasons, the Raavad says that it's a geder for hitzah, that a person shouldn't, Chazal restricted what you can move on Shabbos in order to prevent the issa of hitzah, of carrying on Shabbos. So those are some of the reasons given for muktzah. And another important introduction is that, as we'll see, that within the discussion of muktzah, there are different categories of different kelim. So, for example, different kelim, different articles, different utensils fall in different areas, and one has to understand which area the categories fall in. So, for example, the first category is a klisha melachtoi leheta. So, certain kelim, their primary function is leheta. So, for example, knives, forks, spoons, bowls, cups, and the like. All of those kelim are klisha melachtoi leheta. Their primary function is permissible on Shabbos. Now, therefore, one can move those no problem on Shabbos. A klisha melachtoi leissa, that's the next category, is for kelim whose primary function is for a prohibited use. So, for example, a hammer. A hammer, the primary use of a hammer is to do malachas, to bang nails in a wall, which of course is also on Shabbos, as we've discussed. However, it could be used for mutter functions. For example, you could take a hammer and you could use the hammer to crack open a nut. So therefore, the primary function is issa, but it could have a function which is mutter. That's called a klisha melachtoi le'issa, and the rules we'll see for that in the tzorech gufa, the tzorech makoma. We'll discuss what this means in Mishnah when we encounter it. But for certain exceptions, one is allowed to use them. Another category would be muktzah machmas gufa, which kelim which are not there for food, they're not there for a regular keli which is used on Shabbos. They don't have any inherent function. For example, wood or stones or earth or the like. That is they're in the category of muktzah machmas gufay. And different rules apply to all these different categories. For example, there's also muktzah machmas chisar and kiss. And there are different categories, and you apply the different rules to each category. And the trick is to know which keli falls into which category. Because once you've got the categories, then you know the rules that apply to those categories. So that is a very brief and short introduction to the halachas of muktzah. Let's go straight into the Mishnah, and these halachas will become clearer as we go through them. So it says Mishnah Aleph, Kol hakelim nitolin b'Shabbos. All kelim that may be taken on Shabbos, v'dal sosehen imohen, the deles, the door or the lid of these kelim can be taken on Shabbos as well. Af al pish nisparku b'Shabbos, even though they have become detached b'Shabbos, on Shabbos. Now it's confusing when you read the Mishnah, because the Baratunura explains that the word b'Shabbos actually goes back onto the beginning of the Mishnah. It says the Baratunura, all of these kelim which are permitted to use on Shabbos, for example, you have like a small cupboard with a door or something like that, nitolin b'Shabbos v'dal sosein imohen. It says the Baratunura, v'af al pishin isparku, even though the door has become detached from this keli min hakelim kodem Shabbos, before Shabbos began, nitlim b'Shabbos, they can be taken on Shabbos agav hakelim, by way of the keli. In other words, the way you read the Mishnah is kol hakelim nitolim b'Shabbos v'dal sosein imohen. You can take all the kelim and the doors, af al pish nisparku, even they became detached before Shabbos, i.e. during the week. B'Shabbos, they can be moved on Shabbos itself. That's how the Baratunura understands our Mishnah. Now, the explanation, of course, is that since the kelim are sort of bottled, they're a sort of part of a keli which can be moved themselves, therefore even when they become detached, since the intention is to reattach them to this keli, they still have a status of a keli, of a utensil which can be moved on Shabbos. And therefore you're allowed to move them either with the kelim or on their own on Shabbos. The Tiferes Yisrael explains that the chiddush is that even to move them, the deles, the door of this small cupboard, for example, can be moved with the cupboard itself on Shabbos, and we are not concerned that maybe he'd want to reattach it on Shabbos. We're not choshesh for that, and certainly therefore it would be mutter just to carry the door itself, because there's less chance that he might actually come to reattach it on Shabbos. Okay, and we're talking about a keli which, as I said, the door is going to be reattached after Shabbos, because if it has come off and it's just totally broken, then it would be in a different category of muktzah, and then you've got that's a separate problem, and therefore that would become inherently muktzah machmas atzmai, or a similar type of muktzah, more serious level of muktzah. Concludes the Mishnah, she'einon doimin ledalsos habayis, because the deles, the doors of a keli, is different, is not like the deles, the door of a house. Lefi she'einon min hamucham, a door of a house, it's really bottled to the binyan. It's really considered part of a binyan rather than a keli bifnei atzmo. In other words, the door of a house, its intention is sort of to be part of this house, and it's meant to sort of swivel open on the hinges of the house. And therefore, once it becomes detached from the house, it's not considered, it's lost its status. It doesn't become a keli, it never was a keli, it was sort of bottled to the house. It had a status of this binyan kovua. And therefore, once it becomes detached on Shabbos, it becomes muktzah. Masha'en kein, the deles of a keli, the door of a small keli, which had the status of a keli, even if it became detached, since the intention is to reattach it, it retains its status of a keli, and therefore it does not become muktzah. That is the end of Mishnah Aleph.